Well, here's the thing. Basically, autism books generally break down into three categories. They're written by researchers and clinicians, or they're written by parents, or they're written by autistic people themselves. And I knew that I wasn't a member of any of those communities, in a sense, that I was an outsider and kind of a newbie, as they say. But I had been thinking and writing about autism for a long time. One of the things that I did first when I began my research process, which turned out to be a godsend, really, was I went to a gathering of autistic people called Autreat, which was a conference like Autscape here that was run by autistic people for autistic people. So that gave me the experience of being in the neurological minority for the first time in my life. And it brought up all kinds of interesting feelings. For instance, I'm gay, and so when I was in high school, I was in the sexual orientation minority, and I was very anxious about, like, who am I going to tell and when am I going to come out and stuff. And when I went to Autreat, it was sort of like, oh my God, I'm neurotypical. Who am I going to tell? Can they tell? And it was such a beautiful experience to be at Autreat, because it was an experience of shedding a bunch of clinical cliches that were sort of filtering my vision of who autistic people are. In a way, it was one of the most liberating environments that I've ever been in. And one of the cliches about autistic people was that they don't get satire or something. But there was this wonderful moment when Ari Ne'eman of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, who had just been nominated to the National Council on Disability by Obama, was introduced to the room. And so Ari came in, everybody did flat paws, which is like this, and a girl in the back said, "We love you, Ari, if we were capable of feeling such an emotion." So I realized that even though I'd been reading a million books, a million case studies, a million papers, that in a way, like, here was the living reality of autistic people in the full breadth of their humanity, also relaxed instead of like being in a clinic or something, And so I could see people just being themselves and hanging out in the ways that they found most comfortable in a sensory environment that was suited to their needs. And it was just lovely.
I really enjoyed reading it, and I would say that, wouldn't I? But I did. I devoured it. Here's my copy. All the bits I really want to remember. I didn't find out I was on the spectrum till about 5-6 years ago, and someone thrust a book in my hand and said, "You're like this." So I went and read it, and I got past the first page, then cried, because I thought someone's seen the real me, because all my life I've sat as an observer, watching other people, always felt different, always felt that I didn't quite fit in. And I know that's a bit of a cliche, but reading Steve's book, it was very relevant to me, because there were certain pages that were mirrors. And sometimes you need to be reminded what you look like in a mirror. There was also the anger of the way that people were mistreated, and like stimming was tried to be taken away from you, etc., and the misunderstandings you could see that causes us complete pain. And it doesn't take much to treat us a little bit better.
What I realized was that if I wrote a book that was like, if my ambition was to write a book that every autism parent would read, what about the people I had just seen at Autreat? I wanted to do something absolutely impossible, and it caused me a tremendous amount of stress, honestly, which was I wanted to write a book that all these different constituencies might like, including people who had absolutely no personal connection to autism. Because, like, the first question anybody would ask when I told them that I was writing a book about autism, they'd say, "Oh, do you have an autistic child?" Actually, I don't. Do you have a family connection to autism? Actually, I don't. I'm just really interested in it. And it was kind of like, really? Like, it was as if like no one could possibly be interested in autism unless they had a personal stake in it. And because I had written articles for Wired, not on autism in many cases, I knew how to translate difficult scientific concepts and whatnot to lay audiences. And so I thought that because there were so many misconceptions about autism were really affecting the direction of research, the provision of resources. The misconceptions about autism were screwing everything up. And so I thought that if I could write a book that not only all the stakeholders, would enjoy, but that interested lay people could enjoy, that I might be able to change the world a little bit.